Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring podcasts on the Blue Wire Network. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System yet, then you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Wherever you are across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unified, UNIFYD, healing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
Welcome to I don't even have the right name of this fucking show. Welcome to Pod Mavericks After Dark. I'm Kirk Henderson, and tonight I'm joined by fellow site editor and writer at MavsMoneyball.com, Jordan Brodess. You guys haven't seen him in some time because I don't often beg him to come on, but Josh is at the game tonight. Jordan, how are you?
You know, I volunteered early in the day to do this, and I genuinely thought I was volunteering to do a pod that would be after a win. I really thought they were going to win tonight, so I suckered myself, and the Mavs suckered us tonight. I mean, not good, my dude. I poured myself a drink when it got to 21 in the fourth quarter, and because I thought, why not relax a little bit? And then they turned things around, and now here we are. I think there's a lot to reflect on.
So, before we get started, I don't care. I bring a lot of personal shit into this podcast because I spend a lot of my personal time on this podcast, and on this Mav stuff. So it's there's like a yin and a yang with life, and the way my personal life and professional life goes. If my work life is going well, or if my kid isn't sleeping or something like that, or I'm sorry, if my work life is going well and my kid is sleeping, then the Mavericks are playing like shit. Or the Mavericks are playing awesome. My child is teething 6 teeth at once, or my boss is ready to eject me into space kind of thing. And I've had I nearly wasn't going to pod. I've had probably one of the worst days I've had in years. And you have 2 small children, so you know how this goes. I pull up to daycare to find out the bottle that one of the 3 bottles I've had for my infant, I didn't screw the lid on tight, and so it's just everywhere. All right.
Fun.
My boss misunderstands something I tell him and proceeds to light into me with such vehemence that he called me a drag upon the company. That was really neat.
Not great.
Yeah, which is not true. I'm the hardest working man in non-sports with whatever it is I do for a living. And I kid you not, I don't mean to bring the chat down here. One of my colleagues died. He's been sick for a real long time, and it's not funny, but it's also fuck, man. So the rest of the day, and it's just I missed the first half of the game because I was coaching my son's basketball team, and we got boat raced because and you're gonna love this. The team we were playing against was running 8-year-olds. The team we were playing against was running a double drag screen and roll, and I'm coaching kids that haven't played before, so like trying to teach them to defend in space is really hard. And so we just got crushed. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to come home, and the Mavericks are going to win, and the Mavericks are going to win. And you know it. And then I come home, and the Mavericks are just so. I understand the first quarter, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. My understanding of the first quarter is Kyrie and Luka came out firing, and it looked like the Mavericks were going to go down swinging with their superstars essentially taking most of the shots. Like, I know that's normal.
Yes.
Like, we're talking more than normal, where it was like, oh, we're just going to pass the ball back to Kyrie and Luka kind of thing.
Yeah.
So walk me through what happens in the first quarter with the Mavericks up 1, even though the Mavericks shot pretty well.
So those first several minutes, the Mavericks were as crisp as I have seen them, I guess probably since game 5 against Minnesota. Very locked in. The first play of the game was a specific set to get Kyrie open, and he was aggressive getting to the rim. And the first several shots were one of two of Kyrie or Luka taking someone off the dribble, creating mismatches, and then they were also disrupting Boston on the other end. They were locked in. It was one of those things that you see them, if you watch the Mavericks night in and night out, that was the Mavericks that you've been used to watching. And I said to myself, like, oh, this is the game. This is, a lot was made in the last 2 days, especially, but then earlier today about Porzingis not being available or the injury and whether he would be available or not. Just before the game, it was official that he wasn't going to be. And that was the opening that the Mavericks maybe needed. And they were very, very aggressive up top. To Boston's credit, they sort of took that and just sort of took the shot to the mouth and settled in like a good team does. Whereas I think probably in previous series, as we saw a couple of times, but especially against the Clippers and against the Timberwolves, it would allow for the Mavericks to just kind of set a tone for the rest of the game, even if it stayed kind of close. So you were seeing Kyrie as you've seen him against really the Clippers and the Timberwolves again. He was making a point to get into the lane. He looked comfortable in his shots. He was hitting things from all over the floor. But, after all of that, like you pointed out, it was a 1-point game after the first quarter. And I don't even know that I could. It feels like there were 7 different games within the game tonight. And so it's hard to look back at that first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that was, and say, what did Boston start doing then outside of not panicking? But the one thing that I think was different after those first few minutes and where the Mavericks saw that lead go away was there was a stretch right after all of that where Luka was trying to get his outside shot going. So he was working mismatches, getting Al Horford mainly in isolation. And rather than taking him off the dribble, he was taking step back threes, and he was doing some other things to open up the rest of the floor. And he missed, I think, 5 or 6 shots in a row, not in a row in terms of possessions, but his own field goal attempts, where it was just he was hunting for an outside shot that wasn't there. And then when he sat, the Mavericks couldn't do anything offensively.
Yeah.
That became the biggest warning sign, I guess, was that there was just early on in the game, outside of Kyrie scoring, there just wasn't much being generated when Luka was on the bench, and Luka can't play 48 minutes.
So I'm watching, and then I get home and I'm watching most of the hello feedback. Can you mute yourself when I'm chatting? I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback from you.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny. We're teasing Jordan because he couldn't find his mic when he said he's an audio snob himself. So I'm watching the second quarter, and the Mavericks played okay. A lot of the like you're just Luka missed a lot of tough middies, which he hit in the first half last game. He just didn't have. God, Luka was a +9 in this series. That's crazy in this game. God, him and Lively and Green were the only plus players on the team. Anyhow, so you're watching the second quarter, and they give and they take. They give and they take. There's not much of a lead either. And so the Mavericks walk into halftime with the 51-50 lead. I think that was right. Yeah, 51, because it was kind of a low-scoring second quarter. Neither team really had much going. It was just kind of grimy is the way I would call it. Third quarter, two things happen at once. The tail end of the third quarter, you saw the Celtics connecting on shots that they had been missing. Like, so when Josh Bowe and I have been talking about the fact, like, all right, the Celtics just are capable of these explosions. The tail end of the third quarter was very similar to the first quarter in game one, where the Celtics just rained threes. Their process is good, where they drive, they kick, they drive, they kick. The first part of the third quarter, the Mavericks and Celtics traded lots and lots of 2-point baskets. The Celtics actions are just really good. I have no other way to describe it other than the fact that it's like you got a roving Drew Holiday, like rolling to the basket and getting shots. You have Jaylen Brown, who'd only had 6 in the first quarter, really start to come alive, making difficult baskets. And then was the Jaylen Brown dunk in the third quarter or the start of the fourth? Like I
think that was the start of the fourth.
Okay, so sorry, still getting feedback from you, Jordan. Yeah, I don't know how. It is what it is. It's no big deal. Like, this is we're shoddy, just like the Mavericks. And so I'm sitting there watching the game, and at that point, the Mavericks ended up the period up 15 or down 15. It's like, all right, my kid decides he wants to go to bed. He's tired of watching this. Don't really blame him. He's up too late anyways. He's only 8. And I go upstairs, come back downstairs. The Mavericks are down 21. And then they just make a run for the ages. And they pushed it all the way back. They never led, but they pushed it all the way back within 2. And during that period, there were a couple of bang calls that went against Luka. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of Luka Doncic talk about this game. Like, he gave a quote after that the refs have to be better. And this is nothing. I honestly, like, I don't feel like criticizing Luka too much in this regard. Like, maybe there's another time for it, but I just don't want to do it tonight. I don't feel like the discourse. I wish he would have not fouled someone 94 feet away from the basket. That's one that sticks in my head. I don't love the call on the Jaylen Brown post up. That was his 5th foul. And I like when you hear Doris Burke say great push by Brown and then say it's not an offensive foul. I do think it was a correctly called block, but I also think had they called it a charge, they would have ruled it a charge. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was the kind of bang, like his 6th foul was the kind of bang thing that, I hate having replay for, because we just stare at it and look at it over and over and over again. There's lots of people in the chat saying you just don't foul out a superstar with 4 minutes left. I tend to agree, guys. Adam Silver didn't want that. I promise you. But when you commit fouls, it's going to happen. So,
yeah. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Is that better? Yeah.
I don't think we're getting feedback on your. No, now it's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to, in the middle of that review or the challenge, I was trying to think back on, like, what were the other 6 fouls. The 5th foul, I didn't agree with much either. I mean, it was, my issue with the 6th foul was that there was so much of that game where both teams are just tackling each other. So, yeah. I like the new style of play that the NBA has decided midseason to transition to or move to, and it's obviously worked in the Mavericks' favor for the back half of the season and into the playoffs. They play a physical style of play, but what happens in these games is because the officials can't call a foul every single play, is that then now they're picking and choosing which plays and what degree of contact constitutes a foul. There were multiple times. There was a dunk that Jason Tatum had that someone was grabbing his arm and it wasn't a foul. And you can see the players on the floor all turn.
I thought I heard a whistle too. I know which one you're talking about.
And they're like, oh, I guess we're just going to keep playing. That happens almost every game right now. And so to call that sixth foul in that moment, like, do you want that to happen in a game? No, you probably don't want to have that happen in a game. The loose ball 2 minutes before that, where Jaylen Brown and Luka both like dove and tackled each other, was a no call. So like that's where you start to look back and say, okay, what are we whistling and what are we not? And in that moment, it feels like a robbery of what the game was turning into, which was a really exciting finals game, which is what you'd want to have. The referees aren't in charge of making the games exciting. And Luka, I guess, he needs to be smarter in that moment to say, like, I know I have 5 fouls. It's possible I get called here, but
yeah, like there was one really interesting play. Like Luka takes it all the way up where he's getting absolutely dry humped by Jaylen Brown the whole way up, like bodying, cross-checked, armed, hitting him from behind. Yeah. No call. Don't mind like that. And then he goes into Xavier Tillman and takes a really tough floater. Tillman plays great defense on him and he misses. And Luka gets mad at that. And it's like the foul call actually happened about 15 seconds prior and the refs just didn't call it. It's not the one there. And so it's like, I mean, that part, like the foul part of it, I never like talking about the fouls. I never like talking about the refs. And I don't think that was a decision point in the game because the Celtics don't get up by 21 by refs. They get up by 21 by playing great defense. The Mavericks couldn't hit their shots. And the Mavericks went on just enough of a run to make it interesting. Luka fouls out with 4 minutes left. Kyrie Irving doesn't have enough. PJ Washington continues his truly baffling quasi-crunch time decision-making, even though that offensive foul by him was fucking garbage. Like, I know I just said I don't want to talk about the refs, but you watch that on replay, and, like, we're going to talk about Doris Burke a little later specifically, but, like, the things that come out of the announcers' mouths in these situations where there's just a really bad call and they don't know what to say, that's where it's really, really funny. I don't know, guys. It feels frustrating in the moment because it seems to happen in key stretches where all of a sudden the whistle, works against you. The truth is, overall, the Mavericks have been outmatched for large portions of the games. And they are working from behind often. What I have wanted was for them to play well, even if they're going to lose, and then give a fight. And it was really discouraging at the beginning of the fourth quarter to see them really just bend over and let whatever Boston wanted to do happen. And to their credit, they turned things around. I don't know what was said in that timeout that suddenly got them relocked in, and they benefited from Boston kind of playing with their food a little bit and allowing the Mavericks to get back into the game. That's just what happens to the Celtics. Like if you listen to any of their fans, they're going to be like so I mean, anyway, we can. I don't really want to talk about the refs anymore. So the Mavericks just they just didn't have enough there in the end. They close out the game. They lose 106-99. Mavericks down 0-3. This is kind of an all she wrote sort of thing. I mean, no teams come back from this. Like, I don't want to sit here and say it couldn't happen because, of course, at some point in time in the history of all these things, it will happen. But it is what it is. Like, I watched this game and there are things. We're almost halfway through the show. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to talk about some of this other stuff. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I know it's not fun after a loss. Appreciate the people who are here from YouTube and Twitter. Hang around after this show. We'll post a secondary show if anybody wants to come vent, get out their thoughts and feelings. I got my man Bobby in the chat asking me to talk more about the refs. Shout out to Bobby. And we'll hang out and talk a little more basketball in group therapy. And then we can all go to sleep and maybe hope that the Mavericks play with a little bit of pride and try to steal one on Friday. So now I'm going to insert some ads. And then those of you listening on the audio show the next day, if you are listening, please don't skip through those. That's how Josh and I make a little bit of money. Then I will be right back. Okay, so we talked a little bit in pre-show, and then I just put the kibosh on it because I didn't want to give it away for the show. I think the thing that most fans, past any referee talk, I think the thing that most fans are going to talk about is that Tim Hardaway got inserted into the lineup. Tim Hardaway, who, and this is really, really important, guys. Tim Hardaway last hit a shot on my 40th birthday party on May 18th. We're coming up. It has been 24 days since Tim Hardaway hit a shot in a game, and he continued to not hit shots as he played 19 useless minutes where he was a negative 16 on the floor. The Mavericks were outscored nearly a point a minute with him on the floor. Things got so bleak at one point in the third quarter that Jason Kidd ran a lineup that featured Tim Hardaway, Maxi Kleber, and Josh Green. I thought I was watching the pre-deadline Mavericks. It was painful. Now, the flip side of that, what the hell are they supposed to do? What do you think?
Yeah, so the folks at Moneyball, we were talking about it before Tim really made an entrance tonight, and then again later in the game about the using him or Maxi, or I guess for that matter, Josh Green or anyone else, it's troubling. It was troubling that in a game like this, where everything's on the line, that Kidd is using lineups, is experimenting with lineups. Really, it felt like experimenting. And I guess that's really just you're throwing the pasta on the wall and seeing what sticks, and saying someone's got to do something, someone's got to get hot, and if not, then we have to revert back. What I didn't pick up on, or I guess first what I will say is, Jaden Hardy played early in the game, very early. And then he missed his only attempt, and he didn't really do anything, but was on the floor early, which I thought was odd because he hasn't played a lot of early minutes in this series. And then he used Dante Exum. Exum, I thought, was relatively fine, though. If you look at the box score, he was in 3 minutes. He was a -4. That's not great. But he did have somehow a highlight reel dunk in that 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm curious about using Hardaway to that extent, other than you feel like maybe he gets hot from
He's
three.
got to get hot.
But that
goes
not
against
happening.
But
it
that
isn't
goes
happening.
That goes against what we had talked about in the first quarter, which really felt like the predetermined notion of Kyrie and Luka are going to shoot the ball 25 times each,
Right.
So why is the gunner, and I tell you what, man, there was a shot there. I need to go look at the game log, but he took a baseline jumper at a horrible point in that run and I think it was after Luka was out, so it's I
think it was right after that.
And I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Let me go find this, because this was bad.
So what's interesting is that I sort of felt like he was not that bad defensively. He was very engaged defensively on ball.
He tries hard. He does.
And,
yeah.
And he brought
true.
an energy. And so I was sort of like, well, I guess if he's not going to hit a shot, maybe he's just, he's going to at least provide some sort of resistance from someone dribbling the ball into the lane. But you can't go 0 for 5.
No.
Making the money he is making, coming off the bench, you can't go 0 for 5. I felt coming into the series the Mavericks were at least level with Boston in terms of depth. Boston, for as good as they are, didn't present themselves as a particularly deep team. And if you look at you want to look at just points, the Mavericks outscored the bench for Boston. Now they're without Porzingis, but they outscored Boston's bench had 12 points, and the Mavericks bench had 16 points.
Yeah.
So that's okay. That's good. But Xavier Tillman in his 11 minutes was +9.
Really good.
And
really
Sam Hauser in his 14 minutes was +16.
On the road, no less. Two guys showing up on the road.
And Hauser hit 3 threes, but Xavier Tillman only scored his one basket, which was also a 3. But if you are having to rely on bench to give you just a little bit, which is basically what both teams are asking of their benches at this point, outside of Lively, who played well tonight and had 11 points and 13 rebounds in 30 minutes. He was back to his old self, which was fantastic to see. And over again, it is wild that a rookie center for Dallas is playing at the level that he continues to play at, even though he had 2 below average games to start the series. But Kidd, the fact that it was a must-win game and he didn't have it just wasn't, you can't experiment, or that's really a tell at how bad the situation is if he feels like I don't have a sense of what's going to work.
If Tim Hardaway is the solution, then what the fuck is the question?
Yeah. It's he would have looked, so Kidd would have looked like a genius if Tim would have hit 2 threes.
Sure.
He would look like a genius.
Yeah.
But he has not. I mean, I think it's probably a foregone conclusion that he's gonna that Friday could be Tim's last game in Dallas.
Oh, Tim is always in forever. I don't believe they can trade him. He's just going to be part. He's going to come with the furniture. We're going to have to hear his father make dumb shit comments.
Yeah, I don't want to get. I'm not going to control your podcast here, and there's still at least one more game to be played, but maybe more. Right. So there's no reason to look toward off-season stuff, but it does. Seeing him back in the lineup brings back the question of, and that's what I said to you before you went live here, was what you saw tonight and what you've seen in this series is we need at least a 7th person here, a 6th or 7th person that we can rely on in these situations.
Sure.
And right now that's not Tim. Maybe it's one of these other guys that's on the bench, but it doesn't feel like it right now. And so, you said, I don't know that they could trade him. They may just have to eat the cost. They've gotten rid of other players in the past when it didn't necessarily benefit them in the actual move.
Right.
Or they've had to overpay to get rid of them or just eat the money on it. They may be at that point. Tonight may have been the final sentence on that. I don't know. But it's disappointing that you can't find someone that your coach doesn't know who on the bench in this moment can provide you at least 10 minutes. I mean, I don't know why Hardaway played 19 minutes outside of the fact that he came in after Luka fouled out again. But
yeah, this is a hilarious. I mean, one of the things I think that is the correct takeaway from this series beyond, so it's like, if you admire the Celtics 3-point shooting, I get it. But I think much more valuable to the Celtics offensive structure is having 4 to 5 guys who can reasonably attack off the bounce. Does that make sense? So it's the ability to dribble and drive and not piss yourself is pretty valuable in what the Celtics are doing. And they just kept getting inside, obviously, like Tatum starts the thing and puts them in rotation and then puts the Mavericks into rotation. And that's a challenge, but it's like when your dump off man is Drew Holiday, pretty good. Like, whereas PJ, I like PJ. PJ's been an outstanding addition. But when PJ gets the ball on the move, do you ever feel like supremely confident? It's just a different level, because it's like, it could be a good thing. It could be one of those instances where right before the half, where he somehow doesn't pass the ball on a 3-on-1 situation after a loose ball scrum and gets fouled and misses 1 of 2. Or the previous possession before that, where he gets kind of trapped out on the wing. Luka was up top by himself. PJ couldn't see him. And like, that's like, it's just those minor, and this, again, I don't mean this as like a high level PJ criticism. Like, the Celtics were swarming. They did a great job. That's not, I want to give more credit to the Celtics than to say PJ is a problem. But it's that level of like decision-making where you're able to make a crisp read on a drive and find a guy like that. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, the structure of the Celtics offense, this is an off-season conversation for you guys, but like, the Mavericks aren't going to have the Celtics offense, because the Mavericks have 2 players who work so well within the structure that they've built, right? So they need a third. Do they need a third person at least that can attack off the dribble? Yes.
That's
having a fourth would even be better. But I don't know that the offense in Boston or in Dallas is ever going to look like what Boston has designed here. And some of that's because Luka and Kyrie are so good with the ball in their hands, and some of it's for other reasons. But this series, Boston's defense has been so sound along the perimeter that it has reduced Dallas's offense into being what it was the last several years.
Yeah.
Which was extremely isolation heavy, and really just relying on Luka and Kyrie to create all of it. And PJ has, I think he's averaged something like 14 points per game here in the finals, but there's just not there's not something else that they can turn to, and there's not a structure to the offense that isn't just playing off that high screen. And when you have a defense, this Boston defense is built so well to defend what Dallas does well offensively that they've run into a brick wall. Yeah. I would have felt doubly confident in the Mavericks facing just about any other team in the NBA in this finals, and them having more than a puncher's chance to win it.
Sure.
But now seeing what Boston does, it's just, I haven't, it was somewhere in game 1 or 2 that I had this thought in my head that Boston's offense and defense is basically like the adult physical version of what the Thunder are. They're just like 5 years behind. The way that, outside the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is so good in isolation as well, and pretty much gets to whatever mid-range shot he wants. So much of what the Thunder wanted to do was this drive and kick style that Boston's doing right now, and playing this spread 5-out style, and then defensively the same way, that they have switchable defenders 1 through 4, but nearly 1 through 5. It's just that Boston's the advanced version of that. So it's really no surprise that the Thunder were the toughest test that the Mavericks faced prior to this series. And now they're facing a future version of what that Thunder team is. And it's given them fits, and it has reduced everything into this isolation style that really just depends on Luka and Kyrie doing all of it. I mean, if you would have told me that they combined for what, 62 points, something like that. And realistically, had Luka not fouled out, it would have been more than that, obviously. But if you'd have told me that, I would have said they probably won. It feels like it's inches that each inch becomes a mile, and that's been every single game this series, especially 2 and 3.
Yep. Well, and the last thing I want to talk about, and I'm just going to talk about it for a second, and then we'll kick off to the next show. Like, I tend to like really waffle on and off about whether I have any color commentator on, just because number one, I think 3-man booths can be a little bit too rowdy. I sometimes don't listen to the Mavs ones just because I want to have my own interpretation of what I'm seeing. Like, I want to watch it without being colored by some outside influence. I also don't, but the Doris Burke Boston love is so weird. Can we at least can we as a society come together and acknowledge the fact that she like reminds me of who's that chef who yells at everyone?
Gordon Ramsay?
She gives me like Gordon Ramsay vibes, where it's like everything the Mavs do, it's like, oh man, it's just such an ISO heavy team, not like acknowledging at all that like, the Celtics are forcing the Mavericks to play this way. The Mavericks are not this ISO heavy. But then it's like every time the Mavericks would do something good, she would have something to say about how fucking good the Boston Celtics fans, or about how good the Boston play was, despite what the Mavericks did. And it's like on the Luka 6th offensive foul, I'm sorry, the block call on the floor, she literally says Brown with a great push.
Like, yeah, she did say that. I think she meant pushing the ball, and she said a bat. Okay. I think she misspoke.
Maybe because you're right. That interpretation of it is a lot more.
She kind of then like paused, and then I think she said something about like pushing the pace, or she said
it was
something.
just something like I'm watching during this 20-2 run. And my guy in the Jeffist says, I don't think the commentary is something really to focus on. As the Mavericks are going on a 20-2 run, we're talking about how fucking great the Celtics are. That happened a lot. Go listen to the commentary again. It was really funny. And like, it is what it is. It's not like it affected the game none. Like the option is for me to mute, which is what I would have done had I been able to find my remote, which I could not.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
It's just something that was like on the tip of my. I'm like watching this.
It's
really weird.
I'm a Doris Burke fan, and I like what she does, and I think it's great for the game. And obviously when your team is losing right, 3 games in a row,
a little more
it starts to feel a little like heavy, even from JJ Redick as well. There was, it just felt like, okay, like we get it, Boston's the best team in the league, like that's fine. But I will say that there's been an adoration from the broadcast team that feels forced in some ways. Even when, Jason Tatum was great tonight offensively, but
sure,
the PR campaign that's been rolling for him throughout,
dude, he was
the
still
whole
11
series,
of 20. He was 11 of 26.
And
how does he keep
three?
How does he keep doing this? This is the best. Like, granted, he was quite amazing. So I'm not.
Yeah, he was good tonight.
I didn't know he was that. Like, he once again shot 40%. I wouldn't have known had I gone.
Yeah. So there's a volume of, and that happens with these big market. I guess Dallas is a larger market too, but these big market like coastal teams, like there's a media frenzy for them because the fan base is so big and so responsive, and so it just naturally skews that way. It has been frustrating to watch the games and listen to.
Like, the Celtics are good, and so it's like when you're getting your ass beat in probably 2 out of 3 games, elements of 2 out of 3 games, it feels a little worse. So maybe it's on me for being.
I guess maybe what it is, it feels like they're trying to sell us on how good they are, when it's just like, yeah, we
don't
get
need
it.
this.
They keep winning. Like we know they're good.
The bank shot from Derek White, where I just like started cackling as I'm sitting there going, well, this ain't happening.
The fact that they've had it was a 3-point game, was it not, when he hit that?
The bank shot?
Yes. That banked in 3.
I thought that was the one that put him up 15. I can't remember. That just tells you how many damn threes that team hits.
I swear there was a shot that he hit when it was a close game, that was like a bank shot where it was like, okay, this is still within reach. And it was, I mean, last game it was Peyton Pritchard hitting the 3 from half court at the buzzer when it was a 6-point
yeah.
game. It
Okay.
feels like
The Mavericks are it was a long, what was it? So Brown makes a tip shot off an offensive rebound when the Mavericks were down by 1, and then Derek White hits a 3-pointer to put him up 6. That's the one you're thinking.
Yes. So it was a 3-point game. And when that happens that many times where it's like, okay.
I mean, I've been on the other side of this. I watched Jason Terry do this. I watched like PJ Washington do this. Like,
yeah.
And honestly, it's like, so it's one of the funnier parts about the series where it's just like, I didn't know how, like, if you're not an Eastern Conference watcher, the Derek White is the guy who I'm walking away from this series going, shit, how did don't be mad at the Bucks for getting rid of Drew. Be mad at the Spurs for sending this team Derek White. Like, fuck you, Spurs. Anyhow. Well, all right, I'm going to progress to the next show. Thank you so much for taking part of your evening to hang out with me. So
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll be back here after this. Guys, I'm gonna thank some of my super chats. My man Henry, he says, what in God's name did THJ getting more minutes than Derek Jones Jr. when he got all these DMPs?
We didn't talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. More minutes there. Irregular says, I think momentum shifted when Kidd decided to put Hardy and Maxey in up 12 in the first. Ooh, that's a good take. PC says Luka cannot play for Slovenia this summer. Nope. Well, they have to go through the qualifiers, so I don't know what the margin for error is for Slovenia there. Bobby Chapman says Luka will play for the Slovenians, and I will hate watching the USA. My man Glenn says, thanks, Kirk and Josh. It's been a great year. It's not over yet, Glenn, and I don't think I changed a thing with this team, but we will be better next year. Well, leaves a comment and says, if you take away the one good game versus the Thunder where Tim scored 17 points, this playoffs he scored 29 points in 143 minutes with his last basket coming May 18th. Oh, Tim Hardaway, my goodness. This is a great question. Michael Scott says, Kirk, why are you wearing Miami Heat red? Because I was coaching a team that wore red jerseys. Bobby Chapman says, Doris misspeaks a lot for someone who is paid to talk. That's pretty funny. So do I, to be fair. And he also says, do the Maverick unleash lively corner threes next game? Like, I just want to see a lively three, like in the wild. That's just where I'm landing.
It's definitely happen next season. I can tell you that.
That's what I'm here for. Okay, guys, hang around. If you're on the live stream, everybody else who is listening on the audio, I'll be posting this one probably on Thursday afternoon. Everyone, thank you so much for hanging out. Jordan, you're the best. Go Mavs.
Do you demand action on the U.S. Open this week? If you do, forget those surface level shows and check out the Pat Mayo Experience right now. You need the picks? I got them. Want to hear about Pinehurst from people on location? I got that too. Need some data and trends to impress your friends about golfers they've never heard of? I got plenty of that. Take golf seriously, but have a few laughs at the same time. Sub to the Pat Mayo Experience now, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.